Welcome to LaTour Retirement Talk. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore. And wow, do we have a great show for you today. You are fortunate you're listening or viewing today because Jim Margraf is here, the man with the plan, our host. And you don't have to put up with Josh and his gibberish today. It's just Jim and wisdom. No, I'm kidding. Josh is great. We're teasing Josh because we're jealous, right, Jim?
That's exactly right. We got to get our digs in whenever we can. But yeah, the real reason is we're jealous.
Yeah, he's at Park City, Utah. So, like the premier ski resort. He's a ski bum last weekend and this weekend. And Jim, of course, you're left holding the bag. You're doing all the work, but you're used to that, right?
I've done it before, when they go skiing. Of course, now Josh will tell you that when I go skiing, he's left holding the bag, but he's not here to defend himself. So we're going to get all we can.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But Jim, in all seriousness, how have you been? I bet you have been busy though, right?
I've been very busy. There's, this time of year, people are starting to get their 1099s. People have a lot of tax questions. So there's a lot of those types of things, a lot of service things for clients are happening right now. So yeah, I've been really busy.
Yeah. Well, and I know this is a busy time for you in general, but Jim, I know you love it. Your reward is helping people in the community out, working with people who have questions. I know you love hearing from folks when they view the show or listen or see a clip from the show on social media and they call in and say, hey, what about this? Or can I set up a no-charge consultation to have you look at where I'm at, run some reports? Why not do that? There's no obligation, no sales pitch. I love you guys there at LaTour. You're so helpful. So I just want to encourage our listeners as we talk today throughout the show. And you talk a lot about retirement planning and people think, well, I'm only 40 or I'm only 50. I'm not going to retire. I don't need to hear this. But that's what you're doing right now. What do you think your 401k is for? It's for retirement. The stock market is full of money that people invest. What's that for? Well, if it's not to pass along to your children, it's for retirement because you can't take it with you, right?
That's absolutely right. Retirement planning starts when you do that first contribution to those IRAs or those 401ks. That's when it starts. And so ideally it starts with our first job. But if not, or there's been some other things that happen, there's some things we can do to play catch up a little bit, and that's part of what we want to talk about today, Tony, because, life happens and it's not always smooth sailing. And so, we talked about before, about retiring early. But what I want to talk about today is what if we need to put off retirement a little bit? What if we want to wait a little bit? What are some of the things we can look at? What are some of the things we need to consider when we're thinking about putting it off?
Well, and that's good. I'm glad we're talking about this. We talk about retirement, but when should you actually wait? I know a lot of people think about retiring early, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but maybe you're going to bring up this stat, but I read recently that the majority of Americans, the average retirement age for Americans, now this is an average, is 62. And to me, that's a pretty early retirement. In my opinion, that's retiring early. But there are a lot of reasons to wait beyond that, right? People might want to retire early, but there are many reasons to wait. And then there are many reasons to retire early. Maybe you choose to or you're forced to. So where do you want to begin?
Well, I think we want to start with, if you do have to put off retirement for one reason or another, it's not the end of the world. There are a lot of people that actually choose to put off retirement. And one of the people I like to point out is Warren Buffett. The guy didn't retire. He went all the way till, what is he, in his 90s? And so
he's like
still going
93
strong.
or
93, 94, something like that. The guy just keeps on going. And he's like, what am I going to do? He's like, I don't like to golf. I don't like to fish. I really like what I do. So why not just keep on doing it? It keeps my brain going, keeps me going. It's why I get up in the morning, and I've got a purpose to my life. So let's keep going with it. Yeah. And for a lot of people, that is one of the big reasons for why they still work. And it's because so many times for so many of us, our purpose is wrapped up in, well, I show up to work, I get something in return for what I've done. And it's part of our human psychology.
Yeah.
And so it works for a lot of us to just keep working. Now, I may not want to work at the same level that I did before. I may want to go part time. May want to do on an as needed basis, something like that. But so for so many people, working is wrapped around my purpose in life. Uh,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are the stories out there where we have people that retire and 2 months later, 6 months later, all of a sudden they've got a health concern and you know and they're gone, right?
Mm.
And we've unfortunately we've lost a lot of clients that way. So but I had one gentleman, he says, what am I going to do? He said, sit around and wait to die. He said, I'm going to keep going. He said, I'm productive. I'm a contributing member of society and I can still do this. I'm still strong. My brain's still going good. Let's just keep going.
Hmm.
And so, he said, I work part-time now instead of full-time, but I do my gardening, but I can't do that all day, every day. And he said, I don't fish and I don't golf. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going.
And actually, I checked the stats, Jim. Warren Buffett is 95 years old. So I
95.
was a couple years behind, but
Yeah.
I just looked it up. This year, he's 95 years old, or at least currently he is.
Mhm.
And you're right. I mean, when we mention Warren Buffett, for those that don't know, the Oracle of Omaha
Of
is
Omaha, yeah.
considered one of the greatest, if not the most successful or greatest investors of all time.
Yes.
One of the greatest. People look to him as somebody who really gets investing, gets how the stock market works, and has been the most successful with it. He's been up and down that richest people in the world, and he's a great guy though. A lot of philanthropy, gives a lot back to the community. I know people in Omaha absolutely love the guy. And he's beloved there, and that's where he's from and lives. Still has his main house there.
Right.
I'm sure he has more homes, I would hope, but his house there is very modest. I mean, it's not a mansion. It's really, I've driven by it. My aunt and uncle live there, and so it's very modest. And he can be seen eating at the Boys Town Cafe, which is just a little food breakfast stand inside Boys Town, USA, for wayward boys. I mean, the guy he's something else. He is. So, but we're talking about when should you wait? And even though I said, the average has been 62, I also read the same article said, a lot of people over 50 now, just more recently, it's increasing how many people are choosing to delay. And so this is important to talk about, right?
It is important to talk about. And, one of the things that we looked at, when a lot of people also out there are having to put off retirement for reasons other than choice, right?
Okay.
Life has happened. And so unfortunately that does happen. And so it's not all doom and gloom, but I do want to talk about some of the things that we can do, because there's a lot of people that say, hey, you know what? I'd like to retire in my mid 60s, but because of finances or something else going on, I'm going to have to put off retirement till 70. I know that part of the reason why I even became so interested in the financial world is because of what I saw the predecessors in my family doing, and essentially having to work until they couldn't. And so there was no retirement planning. It wasn't even a thought. The idea of investing in the stock market they thought it was like going to Vegas. Essentially, there was no education in the investment world at all.
Yeah, my mom said you don't ever want to put money in the stock market. It's gambling. And so, she's a good Baptist. Baptist, my mom. And so she's like, gambling's bad. I mean, it took a while for her to even let us use any type of cards. It's like, Mom, this is Uno. I don't think Jesus has a problem with Uno, but that's, but you get it. And a lot of people had that mindset, but over the years we've learned, okay, we have 100 years of history in the stock
Right.
market, and we
Yeah.
realize that
Yeah.
if 73 out of 100 years end up positive, and over time you're going to get growth and compounding interest,
Why not?
yeah, it
I
makes
mean,
sense. Yeah.
to me, it actually, you brought up, your mom being a Baptist. If you do read your Bible, there is some basis in there for investing.
Oh,
Uh,
sure,
there is.
exactly. Yeah, I
So
mean, investing is being a good steward with your money at some point. Now,
yes,
you have to be smart about it and work with trusted professionals who are fiduciaries.
yes,
Otherwise, it can't I
yeah,
mean, some investments are risky, I mean, we
sure,
have and are more like gambling, like
hmm,
Bitcoin or things like that. There are high risk investments out there, and everybody's situation is different. Risk
right.
for some might be safety for others. You never know. It depends on
Hmm.
your situation.
And a lot of times, when we're putting together a portfolio, we may put together those things that are less risk would have the higher percentage of the portfolio, and those things that have the higher risk are a small percentage, right? And so that tends to balance out a portfolio nicely. We have one of our portfolios is one of investment portfolios, very risky. I tell people, if we're going to put money in here, and if you're going to look at it every day, you better take your motion sickness medication, because it's going to move around more than the stock market at large. It's going to
Yeah.
move around that much. But it can bring some nice rewards, but we only want to put a small portion there because of the risk,
Yeah.
right? And
Especially as
so,
you get older, right?
oh yeah, and it's only for those that actually are more comfortable with the risk as well. So even for someone who may have a large portfolio, if they're not comfortable with risk, we're not going there, right?
Right.
So there is this. It is about balance, and it is about your individual situation. What is your risk tolerance? What are your goals? What are your objectives? What do you want these funds to do for you? And if you're not comfortable with a lot of risk, then we need to stay away from those types of investments. But for some who are, hey, let's get into them, but let's do it in a smart way. But one of the things I want to talk about here is some of the other reasons why people have to put off retirement.
Yeah.
And one of the big ones is how much they've been able to save for retirement.
Right.
One of the some of the big things is, while there's no magic number as far as how much we need, maybe I got a late start. Life was difficult. There were some other situations like, and I couldn't get started, or I had a major life setback and it wiped out the retirement savings that I did have. And so, if you're having to get back into it and you're starting to save all over again, then there are some things that we can do and to pay attention to here that can help us out. And, when we look at, let's start with Social Security, because that's a big one for a lot of people. If you don't have a lot of other savings, then you might want to wait to start taking your Social Security and get that full retirement benefit. But how about this? For every year you wait past your full retirement age to start taking your Social Security, it's an extra 8% plus cost of living adjustments for your monthly benefit. So you can wait all the way up until age 70, which would give you an extra 24% over your full retirement benefit plus the cost of living adjustments to help make up for any shortfall in savings that you might have. So putting it off just a couple of years, it's one of those things. As we think about the way our brains work. Looking forward, a couple of years seems like forever, but if you turn around and look at it in the rearview mirror, it seems like 5 years ago was just yesterday, right? So sometimes there are some things we need to do, and one of them can be, let's put off retiring so we can put off taking our Social Security and have that benefit amount increase over a few more years to get closer to what we need to have coming in on a monthly basis to maintain our standard of living. So, that's a really big one, is the Social Security.
Yeah, that's
Another,
huge.
it is. And, that's why when we sit down with potential clients, one of the reports we run on a regular basis is a maximizing your Social Security report. How does a married couple maximize that over their lifetime to get the maximum in lifetime earnings from Social Security? Now, we got to take those numbers and align it with also your individual situation, and then build that into a plan. But it does help give us a little bit of a roadmap for what to do with our Social Security, depending on our situation. So, the Social Security is the foundation of our income in retirement,
Yep.
and when and how we take it is very, very important. It can help out a lot.
Yeah, and it can even affect your spouse. So it's not just
Sure.
about when you take your Social Security can affect your spouse later on. So
Mhm.
you want to consider all these things, and I know that this is a big part of what you do to help people there.
It is.
And if our listeners need help or want to have a Social Security
Hmm.
maximization report run, if you have not yet filed for Social Security or you just recently filed, go in, have that report run, and that
Yep.
is a reason why some people might delay retirement is to let their Social Security roll up a little bit more. And maybe they won't file, or maybe you retire and don't file. But
Right.
savings is the big one. I know that's the big
Hmm.
reason, and there are things you can do. Get it estimated, get a financial plan in place, work with somebody like yourself, and you can overcome that. What's another reason why people might be delaying retirement?
Another one is healthcare. So if you're
Hmm.
going to retire before age 65 when you're eligible for Medicare, those healthcare costs are expensive. And
Yeah.
so, depending on where your income is and what we're looking at here, that's why we have a team that's a part of us here that helps out with the Medicare and the other insurance and the health insurance. Because so many people, I don't know, Tony, I talked to so many people and well, I'd like to retire at 63. But you know what? I'm going to wait till 65 because now I'm eligible for Medicare and I don't have to pay for that other health insurance that's going to cost me $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500 out of pocket. With what's happened this year, the healthcare expenses have just gone up by so much this year.
Yeah.
And so I've had so many people, they're going to wait till 65 so that they can get on Medicare and have that instead of trying to pay for an expensive plan ahead of Medicare.
Yeah. Well, and like you say, a lot of people, if they want to retire early, which I
Hmm.
consider anything before 65 early or 67,
Right.
but if you want to retire 55 or 60 or
Oh yeah.
62,
Hmm.
um, your work was probably covering about half of your health insurance costs, whether you know it or not. Well, no, I pay all this money each month for
Or
my
more.
work. You're going to pay a lot more
Yeah,
if
you
you're
are.
between Medicare and work sponsored health insurance. That in between is outrageously expensive. And if you're self
It
employed,
is.
you already know that. Or if you
Right.
don't get insurance through your work and you're not
Mhm.
65, you know this, and it's risen exponentially, even through the Affordable Care Act, the exchange. Those premiums have gone up. So
Mhm.
you're looking at a lot of money that you're going to have to calculate. And I know this, you do that for people who come in and want to retire early. You say, okay, let's look at what health is going to cost you.
Right.
Because even after you get Medicare, people don't realize how big healthcare costs are going to be. And we've talked about that a
Right.
lot on the show, but I
Mhm.
just wanted to point that out because people don't realize you still have co-pays, premiums,
You
deductibles,
do.
and that
Mhm.
max out of pocket is still there. So
It is.
no matter what. And so healthcare is expensive, and that is a reason to put off. I've told this story on the show before, but my 70 some year old neighbor, he worked until he was 70 because he had such great health insurance through the state,
Mhm.
but it stopped if he retired. So they
Right.
used to continue it. Like he used to be able to keep
Oh,
getting
wow.
it through the state even after he retired. But they stopped doing that. And at least it wouldn't cover his wife. He worked until he was 70 because he couldn't afford health care. He could be on Medicare, but his wife was much younger, so she wouldn't. And they
Okay.
looked and they did the math and they're like,
Mhm.
nope. But there's now, if he
Yeah.
had planned ahead and been working with you since he was 50 or 55,
Right.
he could have probably retired when he wanted to. But
Mhm.
they say the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago, the second
Right.
best time
Is
today.
today. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
healthcare is a biggie.
It is a very big one, and we've had times when we're putting together a plan for someone, and when the healthcare comes in, becomes part of the conversation, we'll actually have them go sit down with someone from our Medicare team to help plan how much that's going to cost. In addition, because we got to figure out where that budget is, right? And so bring that into the picture, get some concrete costs as far as what we're going to have on the healthcare, and then we can help build the financial plan from there as far as the income plan. How do we maintain that standard of living? And so we need all those questions answered and all those boxes checked. So the one of the other things that I want to get into here, though, Tony, is when we're looking at, hey, I had a life setback or I got started late, every year where we look at how much we can contribute to those IRAs and Roth IRAs and how much we can contribute to those 401ks, and they move up each year with inflation. But at 60 years old here, or at 50 years old, I'm sorry, we have a catch-up provision. So whereas this year you can contribute $7,500 to that IRA or Roth IRA. If you're 50 years old and older, now you have an extra $1,100 that you can add to that. And for the 401k, it's $24,500. But if you're 50 and older, now we have an extra $8,000 that you can add to that. So that is a really nice addition there. And again, it has to make sense for your budget. But one of the things that I want to bring in here was for those who are still working, you've crested 60 and you say, you know what, I'm going to have to keep on working for a few more years here. There's some extra things that we can do, especially when we look at those that are 65 and older, the extra deduction that we get for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh my word. So listen to this number. So normally we're talking about $32,000 as a standard deduction, $32,200
right?
For a couple.
Yep.
Once you get over 65, it's an extra $1,650 a person. Okay. But for 2025 through 2028, there's an extra $6,000 a person. So we're looking at a total of $47,500 of a deduction. Yep. So if you're a little bit behind on your savings for retirement, this is now the time to accelerate how much you can set aside, because you're not paying 1 penny of income taxes on $47,500.
Yeah, that's
this
amazing.
Is huge.
Yeah, for couples 65 and older, $47,500. I told my dad and mom,
right.
They're not doing so well, but I did explain to them, you're not going to have to pay taxes this year.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you're not even going to come close. I mean, because they don't have income and they don't have a lot. So, they didn't pay much anyway, but with the farm, they still own a farm. And so there's taxes, but I said, no federal tax for you this year. That's for sure. I mean,
I've had so many people come in, and we looked at their incomes from last year, and I said, all right, well, we need to make an adjustment. And they said, what do you mean? I said, we can stop paying taxes on this account, on the income coming from here. We can stop paying taxes on your Social Security, stop paying on your pension, because you're not going to have to. And so that's one of the things. We'll run a calculation and say, hey, where are we? And, I just had somebody yesterday, and, it ends up with an extra $300 a month. Well, for someone on a fixed income, an extra $300 a month because of the reduction on taxes is huge. It just makes life that much easier. Yeah. And so part of the planning that we were doing with someone was, okay, we can stop taking taxes out, but now we can take those extra dollars and we can pay off a debt, so that by the time we get to 2028, when this extra $6,000 runs out, they're not going to have this extra payment over here. And now when we lose that deduction when it expires for 2029, they're going to have enough, their income requirement is going to go down enough, because they're not going to have that payment anymore. They're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so it's all part of the strategy. You'll bring in, those things that we owe on, and have it all work together. Yeah. And so it's all part of the planning. This is a comprehensive plan. Taxes are such a huge part. Our healthcare, our income, our investments, it's all part of the plan for what to do in our retirement years.
Yeah. And we talked about some reasons people need to wait to retire. And the
Mhm.
positives of that, one being some of those deductions. But the cons are it can be
Right.
harder to stay at your job the older you get, if
It
it's
can.
stressful or burnout or health reasons, right?
Yeah, and you might miss out on some of those bucket list items. You know, you want to go travel, you want to do, and so as you get older, some of those things are a little bit harder to do.
Hmm.
But you know, if life gives you lemons, there are some things we can do here to make some lemonade.
Yeah, LaTour can help you make some lemonade.
There you
LaTour
go.
Asset Management, and that's you, Jim. That's where you come in. Well, hey, it's been a great show. We're running close to being out of time.
Mhm.
How do you want to sum this up, and what should our listeners be doing?
Well, Tony, I want to say this. There's no such thing as a one size fits all when it comes to retirement planning. So, for one person versus another, where do we stand on taxes? Where are we on income? When should we file for Social Security? There's no two people that are identical on all these things across the board. What's right for your friend or your brother-in-law may be the wrong time or the wrong thing for you. Okay, maybe the one investment that your brother-in-law, your good friend absolutely loves might be the wrong one for you. So it's not a one size fits all. It's highly individualized. And so what we want to do is our goal as financial advisors is to sit down with each incoming prospective client, get to know them, get to know your finances, and plan for them for you put a plan in place for you exactly and your situation and how you think about risk and how you think about some of these other things that matches you, your personality, your goals, and your objectives.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, Jim, this is great. Now, how can our listeners get a hold of you to ask questions or set up that no charge, no obligation consultation?
Absolutely, Tony. It's very easy. Give us a call. Our phone number is 417-641-3497. Whoever answers the phone here at LaTour can schedule an appointment for you to come in and sit down and talk with us. Also, don't forget to visit our website at latourasset.com. Check out the blog on there. You can check out our events page. We have a lot of information on there for you.
All right. Sounds great. And listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of LaTour Retirement Talk with our host today, Jim Margraf.